Welcome back to Sane Reactions. I am your host, Kev, and it's been a while, folks, I will admit. But it's actually been kind of refreshing to see that I've still been able to have a little bit of growth and I still be able to reach the goals that I set for myself and a little bit beyond. And I just want to say thank you. I never thought that I'd actually be successful at this, and it's something that I'm finding as I do more of, I'm enjoying doing. And this is going to be a video that's actually primarily going to be focused on inspecting a used car, what you should look out for, tools you can use, and the thinking about approaching these vehicles in order to be able to do it quickly, efficiently, and don't necessarily get yourself in a situation where you're on the hook for thousands of dollars in repairs that you could have caught in a simple inspection. Now, before we get into it, I just need to say a quick shout out and quick thank you. I'm well beyond 10,000 subscribers, which was a goal that I set a while back, and I've been able to blow past that and then some. And I have every single one of you sane folk, every single one of you returning viewers. I just want to say a quick thank you for all the support. I appreciate it. Even in my absence, I still managed to gain a few more subscribers, and I've been primarily uploading shorts. If you guys want to check out those shorts, please go ahead and click the short section and check those out. They're very informative, they're short to the point, and this one is going to be one in the video series, like I said, of primarily inspecting a used car. And I'm gonna show you guys some tools you can use, and I'm gonna try to explain to you how you can use these things and why they're important, as well as just the process from beginning to end, what you should be looking at first versus what really shouldn't be that big of a concern, depending on who you are and what it is you're looking for. Now, before we waste any more time, if you guys actually enjoy this video and you enjoy the information, please consider hitting that subscribe button, hitting that like button, sharing it around. I'm pretty sure there's going to be people around you that are going to need a helpful voice in order to be able to approach this situation, because it is tax time and everybody's getting those returns, and they're looking to either get their first vehicle or replace one that's being very problematic. And this is something that I encourage every single person. If you're going to buy any car, inspect it before you sign on the dotted line. And that's just to save yourself from being able to avoid having multi-thousand-dollar expenses on something that you thought was, according to the dealership selling it to you, was ready to go. So before we waste any more time, like I said, let's get into it. All right. Without further ado, I'm going to try to keep this as short and sweet as I possibly can, because I'm going to be jam-packing a lot of information, and I'm going to be hitting you guys as fast as I can with these things back to back. Now, the first thing we're going to do is what you want to consider. Okay, you can either, if you have a mechanic friend, if you don't have one, make one. Or you're gonna have to invest in some tools for yourself. What I recommend personally is that you guys invest in these tools. It'll probably cost you maybe around $100-$200 depending on the quality of the tool that you buy, but it will have you a set of things that you can use to check your car at any time in order to be able to figure out if there's something wrong or if there's something that needs to be addressed, and if its long-term value will outweigh the cost that it's going to cost initially. So without further ado, the first thing that I want you guys to take note of is going to be a tread depth gauge, and that's going to be this little tool right here. If you guys look at it, it is a little tiny tool, and what it is primarily used for is checking the depth of the tread on the tires that are on the vehicle that you're looking to purchase or one that you already own. And what that's going to tell you is how much life those tires have in them. Tires are more critical to the handling and the stopping of your vehicle than most people realize, and the depth of the tread is primarily what dictates that. And now, generally speaking, most tires every 10 years should be replaced, but aside from the shelf life of the tire, you want to replace them based on the tread depth. And again, a tread depth gauge will be the tool that you're going to use to figure out that, and I'll go into a little bit more detail a little later as to how to use this tool and what you should be looking for. Now, the next tool that I have here is going to be called an OBD2 scanner. Now, this little machine right here is going to have a cable that's connected to it, and you can see that this cable right here has a port on the opposite end that is shaped just like this. Now, if you look down underneath the dashboard and the steering wheel area of your car, you're going to see a port that's primarily the same exact shape as that connector, and that's going to be the OBD2 port. Now, what OBD stands for is onboard diagnostics, and that is version 2. So when you connect that tool, what you're going to be able to do is look at the computers that run your car. Primarily, there's a computer called the ECU, that is the engine control unit. That is the one that runs the engine. And then you have a couple more computers. Now, again, this is going to be where the amount of money you spend on your tool is going to dictate what you're able to do with that tool. Now, generally speaking, an OBD scanner, you can get one as cheap as $20, or they can go, this is going to be the most expensive tool that I'm going to talk to you guys about in this whole set of tools, but it's going to be from anywhere from 50 up to 160. This particular tool that I have is 160. Now, the reason it is that much is because you're able to also check something called the ABS module. That is the anti-lock braking system module. That is the one that actually stops your car in the rain and the wet weather in a manner that is actually more efficient and more capable than you just having regular brakes on your car. And you also have something called the SRS module. That is the safety restraint system module. That is the thing that actually controls the airbags in your car. It's going to have a plethora of sensors all over your car. You have sensors in the front bumper, you have sensors in the steering wheel, you even have sensors in the seat that you sit in. Most people don't even think about these things, but if there's an issue where you have an airbag light on your dashboard, that is going to be primarily controlled by the SRS module. If you have a light that is on that says ABS, that is going to be primarily controlled by the ABS module. Now, whenever you guys get what you traditionally think of as a check engine light, that's going to be the actual ECU that's commanding that light on. Now, the check engine light can come in many different forms. You can either have one that looks like a little tiny orange engine, or you can have a light that says service engine soon. Both of those can be primarily used by the car, depending on the manufacturer, to signify a check engine light situation. Now, the other tool that I'm going to show you here is actually called a multimeter. Now, the reason you want to use this tool, this is actually, you can use this tool in your house, you can use it on your car, but you can use it for a number of reasons. And what you're going to have on the multimeter is you're going to have two little leads. They're going to be, you know, pretty sharp at the tip right there. And then you're going to have the main unit, which is right here, which you can see has a whole bunch of different functions that go around here. Now, what you're going to be using this tool for is going to be able to tell you the state of the battery that is in the car and the actual output of the alternator, which is the thing that actually gives the car, once the car is running, the alternator is the thing that's charging the battery, and the car primarily works off of the alternator. The big misconception is that most people think that a battery is actually the one component that powers the car, but the fact of the matter is the battery is literally just there to start the vehicle and no other reason whatsoever, and maybe run the radio when the engine is off. But when the engine is running, the alternator is doing all of the power generation for the entire car. That's what's running the headlights, what's running the computer, what's supplying the power to your radio, and anything else in between. Now, the reason you want to be able to assess the battery and the alternator is because these two components can be quite costly depending on the vehicle you have. An alternator can run anywhere from $200 to $400 depending on the manufacturer, and that is something that you want to make sure is working correctly. And again, we're going to get into more detail a little later, and I'll explain to you what it is you should be looking for and what you should do. Now, the last tool that I'm going to show you guys here is a very simple tool. It is a headlamp, and you know, this is going to be what you're going to use to be able to look around the vehicle, primarily in those darker areas underneath the vehicle and the wheel wells, and it's going to help you be able to identify if something is leaking and if you have any issues that need to be addressed that you might not see at first glance. Now, the thing that I'm going to really focus on here is going to be primarily inspecting the bones of the vehicle. I'm not really going to be talking too much about paint and interior and the things, you know, the touch, the things that you see visually, because that's going to be subjective. Some people may be looking to have a nice car that they, you know, they're more worried about what other people think when they see the car, and some people want something that's reliable. I'm focusing this video on the people that want something that is reliable, because at the end of the day, you're going to be spending 4, 5, 6, in some cases 15, 20, $25,000 on a used vehicle. The last thing you want to do when you purchase that vehicle is have 4, 5, $6,000 worth of repairs because you could have just walked away. You don't have to buy any vehicle, and that's the one message I really want to push here, and I want you guys to understand: know when to walk away, because a lot of times people get the idea of a car that they want in their head and they're like, man, this one's right here, this is the one that I want. But sometimes what you want is not what is necessarily right for you, and that's because a lot of things that go into making a car be reliable and be functional over a long period of time gets overlooked. And primarily in my experience, and again, this is from my experience, I've been doing mechanic work now for 20 years. This is what I went to college for. This is what I still do to help people. This is part of the reason I haven't really been making videos lately, is because I've had a lot of people that have been calling me, and you know, I'm almost like a philanthropist when it comes to doing mechanic work. I don't gouge people, I don't take advantage of them. I try to get people back whole, that way they can still take care of the things that they need to take care of in their life. And that's just the way that I operate. And that's why in this particular field, you know, I can't make hundreds and thousands of dollars a year, because I just don't like taking advantage of people. And this is why I'm putting this video out, so that I can give you guys some information to order to be able to help you, you know, in a way that somebody else or most mechanics might not want to. Because generally speaking, if you're getting a mechanic to look at a car for you, do an inspection, they're going to want to charge you $150, $200 to do that inspection. Now, if you're looking at 5, 6, 7 cars, that can get costly real fast. That's why I recommend, again, if you guys want to make the small investment in yourself, for about $200, you can get all the things that I showed you and be able to, you know, inspect any car that you have in front of you. And not only just inspect these cars, but in the future, if you have any issues with, you know, a check engine light or an airbag light or something going off, you can pinpoint right away what the problem is and be able to use these things to get yourself out of that situation and kind of put yourself, you know, back on track, and knowing what you're going to expect if you go to a repair shop. Now, well, I have my little model over here. It's actually one of my children's toys. I'm going to switch the camera over, and I'm going to be using this in order to explain to you guys how to use these tools, and primarily just the tread depth gauge and what it is you should be looking for. Okay, now I have my handy dandy truck right here, and what it is that we're focusing on right now is going to be the tires. Let me get this boom mic out of the way. What you're focusing on is going to be the tires. If you look at these tires, you see you have the pattern that is on the tires. This is going to be your tread. Okay, now what you're actually looking at when you're using this tool is going to be the spaces between these treads. Okay, the depth of this space right here is going to be your tread depth. That is what this tool is primarily designed to check. Now, if you look at this tool, the very bottom, you see there's a little band of red and there's a little band of yellow. The red means that your tires are way beyond their shelf life and they should probably be replaced immediately, because you're more than likely to end up in an accident, in a an emergency braking situation. Yellow means you might be able to get with it, but the quality of your actual traction has been diminished. And green means you're generally speaking still good to go. Now, these tools are going to have a number around here, and they're in 30 seconds. So you're going to hear the term 30 seconds. You're going to have 2 30 seconds, which is right where the red and the yellow meet. And then you have 4 and 5 30 seconds, which is going to be the yellow area. And 5 30 seconds and up is usually, generally speaking, where you're going to have this green area right here. Now, what you do is that you actually just, you push this down to where you see the silver is exposed, and you're going to push down on the tire, and the space that's left, if you look at this gauge right here, you see there's how it's still protruding out. The space that's left is what's going to give you your reading. Now, on this little toy right here that I have in front of you guys, it is the same as the tires on your truck or your car. You're going to have your tread depth. Now, if you look at this gauge, you're going to see where the silver meets the actual green. That's going to be your reading. That's going to tell you exactly what the tread depth of the tires you're measuring are. This particular one, I'm at 730 seconds. That's actually quite comparable to what you're going to see on brand new tires on an actual vehicle out in the real world. Now, the reason you want to check this is because when you're looking at a used car, the first thing you're going to have to tell yourself is that if you buy that car, a set of tires, for generally speaking, basic tires, are going to run about $500 to $800. That is not an expense that you want to actually have as soon as you buy a car. Now, can they be a little bit low? Yes, but if they're in that red area, that's something that you want to use as a negotiating tool when you're trying to purchase this car. Tell the dealership, hey, I'm willing to work with you, but either you're going to have to put a set of tires on this car, or you're going to have to reduce the price, or I'm going to have to walk away. Again, it is okay to walk away from a vehicle that is not up to standard and is not safe for you to be able to drive. So just again, this is a tread depth gauge, and this is going to primarily show you the quality and the health of the tire, and be able to determine if that's something that you have to have addressed prior to you purchasing that vehicle. And even if it's a vehicle that you already own, you can use this tool in order to see if it's time for you to get new tires. Now, the next tool we're going to be looking at here is going to be the flashlight. Okay, now the reason you want to use this flashlight is because you want to check underneath the vehicle and around the components of the vehicle to see if you have any leaks. Okay, now I'm going to show you guys a little clip here of a video, and it'll kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about and get you to understand the difference between a leak and a seepage. Okay, seepage is a term that's used in the automotive world that pretty much just tells you that there's a little bit of fluid there, but it's not necessarily leaking. Due to vibration and due to the age of a lot of these components, they're going to have a little tiny bit of fluid that might slip through the cracks, so to speak. And that doesn't necessarily mean that that component is bad or broken, but if you have an active leak, you're going to have a very wet appearance. It's going to almost look like as if you just splash some oil on there, and it'll have a very shiny, wet appearance. Now, when you're using a headlamp and you're actually focusing that light and shining it directly on something that is actively leaking, you'll see it clear as day if it's wet, because it'll have that light reflect off of it. Generally speaking, if something is leaking, that's something that needs to be addressed, because leaks do nothing other than slowly lose the fluid of the component that you're looking at, whether it be a transmission or it be a differential, which you have right here in the middle. And this is a toy, but the principle is still the same. You have a differential that can be in the back of the vehicle, or you have a transmission which can be in the front of the vehicle. If you have fluid leaking out of that, that is no bueno. Eventually that fluid's going to go so low, you're going to have damage, and we're talking about thousands of dollars of repair here. Now, the other thing you can use the flashlight to check is because sometimes you have suspension components called shocks and struts. Okay, now if you look inside here, you see this little spring that we have right here. This is primarily very similar to the component you're going to see on a vehicle that you're purchasing. This right here, this thing right here, is going to have a central hydraulic component, and then it's going to have a spring around it. Now, every single tire on your car has one of these. If you're in a situation where you're looking at a car and you're like, man, this car is like leaning on one side, or it's sitting funny, and you're not really entirely sure why, a big cause of this is usually going to be because of these components here. Now, again, the flashlight, if you shine a light on that component and you see any wetness around that component, that means that the fluid that's inside of the central component, which is the shock or the strut, has actually ruptured and it's leaking out, and that component is pretty much trash. The only way you're going to be able to get the car to sit right, again, if it's sitting off to one side or it's leaning in some kind of way, the only way you're going to be able to fix that is if you change that component. Now, generally speaking, this is going to be a $60 to $150 component, and again, your car has one on every single tire, so we're talking about a repair that can be something as minor as $150 for one. And generally speaking, you want to change these in pairs. So you're going to have the ones at the front, and then you're going to have the ones at the back. If you're going to be changing this one, generally speaking, you want to change both of them at the same time, because if you don't, what you're going to end up with is that maybe now instead of it leaning this way, this side might be a little bit higher and this side might be a little bit lower because this component is brand new. So generally speaking, you want to change them in pairs. So that's, again, something to look at if you're purchasing or inspecting a vehicle. Now, the next thing we're going to move on to here is going to be the OBD2 scanner. And what you're going to be using the scanner to do is inside your vehicle, underneath the steering wheel, right in this area down here, you're going to see a port that is going to correspond with this right here. This is called an OBD2 port. And once you plug this computer in, you're going to, put this on the car and turn the key to the on position. Now, if you're looking at a car and the person that is selling you that car is telling you, I don't want you hooking up any computers, I don't want you hooking up any scanners, walk away. Don't walk, run away from that vehicle, because that means that they probably know that there is something on that car that they don't want you to see, and they don't want you to find out prior to you buying it, because it's going to be something that's going to end the deal right there. Don't let anybody bamboozle you into thinking that you have to wait. An inspection is something that is industry standard. Now, if they're not willing to let you hook up that scanner, again, walk away. It is not worth your time. It is not worth your money. And once you hook up the scanner, you're going to go ahead and use the scanner. And these tools are pretty intuitive. You're not going to do any damage. You're not going to break anything. The only thing that you want to make sure you don't do not erase. They have a function here called erase codes. Do not erase any codes, because what this tool is going to be able to let you do is when you're actually looking at a vehicle and you want to know if that vehicle is ready for inspection, because there's some states where you have to have an inspection done. And if your catalytic converters, let's say, are not working properly, or your oxygen sensors aren't working properly, or you have a check engine light, you're not going to be able to get an inspection. Now, there's some states that you don't need an inspection, but still, the fact remains is that the computer is going to tell you if these components are bad. Now, when we're talking about vehicles, this is just a toy, but you're going to have either a 4-cylinder engine, which only has 4 cylinders as it suggests, or you're going to have a 6-cylinder engine. Now, what that's going to dictate is going to be on the exhaust system that comes out of the back of your car. You can have 2 catalytic converters or 1 catalytic converter. A 4-cylinder, generally speaking, is going to have 1 catalytic converter. Now, a V6, again, because it is in the shape of a V, you're going to have 2 banks. And a V8, again, is in the shape of a V. You still have 2 banks. You're going to have 2 catalytic converters. Now, if the catalytic converters are bad on a vehicle, we're talking thousands of dollars to replace those. They should not be bad on a vehicle that you're purchasing, especially if it's in a state that you're going to have to actually replace those catalytic converters before they'll even let you register that car. The catalytic converters are actually going to be found. You have something inside the computer called the IM readiness monitors. Okay. Now, this is actually going to be a section inside this computer. Once you connect it and you do your scanner inside this computer, you're going to be able to go to the IM readiness monitors. Now, that is going to do primarily one thing. You're going to have the catalytic converters in that menu. You're going to have the oxygen sensors in that menu. You're going to have drive cycles in that menu. And what you should see when you check that, it should say everything should be green, or it should say okay. If it says anything other than, or if it's not green or it's okay, that means that whoever hooked up the scan tool to that car last may have cleared the codes. And once you clear those codes, those monitors are reset. And if you don't drive the vehicle for a certain amount of miles, it will not tell you if the catalytic converters are bad, and it will not tell you if the oxygen sensors are bad. Those components are extremely expensive. Some oxygen sensors can run as high as $200 to $300 per sensor, and they can be a little cheaper. But if you have a 4-cylinder engine, you're going to have 2 oxygen sensors. You're going to have one that is going to be upstream, where you have your engine inside your car. You're going to have an upstream sensor, which is going to be the one that directly comes out of the engine. Again, this is going to be inside the engine bay. It's not going to be something you're going to be able to see very easily from the outside. And then you're going to have your catalytic converter. And then after that catalytic converter, on the way back towards the back of the car, you're going to have the another oxygen sensor, which is going to be the downstream oxygen sensor. Now, if we're just talking about, this is just the exhaust system. This has nothing primarily to do with the engine running, but on the exhaust system, you know, you have on a 4-cylinder, again, 2 oxygen sensors and a catalytic converter. On a V6 or a V8, you're going to have a total of 4 oxygen sensors and 2 catalytic converters. Now, if we're just going generally speaking, a catalytic converter can run about $800 to $1,000 per catalytic converter. And if you're talking about oxygen sensors, we're talking about $200 to $300 per sensor. That right there alone is going to be between $1,500 to $3,000 of components that you want to make certain that they are good before you purchase that vehicle. You do not want to wait until afterwards. And having this OBD2 scanner and connecting it into the actual car is going to be able to tell you right away if those components are good, and it could save you a ton of money. Now, again, when checking, if it is green and it says okay, you're good to go. That means that the car has been driven enough to where the computer thinks it's okay. Mind you, can an issue arise after you actually purchase the vehicle? Absolutely. Don't count it out. But can you make certain that you're not putting yourself in a situation where you're buying a car for $8,000, $9,000, $10,000, and then all of a sudden you have a $2,000 repair bill, and that's just for the parts, not to mention to get somebody to put them in for you. Now, we're gonna switch over here, and like I said, when you're using the light, you want to look for leakage or seepage. When you're looking and you're using that light, what you're gonna want to do is you're gonna shine it on all the areas, mainly the suspension and mainly underneath the areas of the car where you can see the bottom of the engine, the bottom of the transmission, around the differentials. The differentials are going to be the things where your axles and your wheels are connected to. If you see any kind of wetness in those areas, that means you have an active leak. Now, if it looks kind of like dry and dusty, but it looks like it's gotten wet, that might just be seepage. Okay, and this is something that is very normal on a lot of cars, especially higher mileage cars. You're talking cars with 120, 150, 200,000 miles. So what I'm going to show you guys right here is going to be a very short clip of a video that actually kind of puts this into perspective so you can understand. And this is important because if you have an active leak on your car, the repair bills are, I mean, it depends on what the component is, but we're talking about hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in repairs here. So
the appearance of this type of seepage will typically have a matte finish.
Now, if we're looking here again, this is just a seepage, because you see how it comes out, but it kind of stops. It doesn't actually just run down the whole component and it's like dripping onto the ground. This is just seepage. This isn't necessarily, you know, an active leak. But I'm gonna let it continue here, and then we'll get back to my breakdown for you guys.
That oil and substance picks up the dirt and grime.
See, again, if you look at this, you can see that it doesn't look. You can see some moisture, but it doesn't look like it's pooling or it's not dripping off. When you're looking for a leak, you're going to look at the lowest point, because most leaks are going to want to coalesce on the lowest point they could possibly reach. And in this particular picture here, again, this is an engine meeting a transmission, and this is going to be the area where you're going to see drops coming off. If you see it looks wet, like you just took a garden hose and sprayed it on there, that's an active leak. And you know, I'm not going to get into too much details because, again, this is more of an inspection video, not necessarily a mechanic how-to video. And this is going to be something that you guys can use to just better inform yourselves and be prepared and know what to look for if you don't have a mechanic available to do the inspection for you. And I'll go ahead and let them keep going
around it, and gives it that matte finish. If it is an active leak, chances are it's going to have a very shiny finish because it is leaking either out of the case and onto the ground and needs to be addressed right away.
And here's another small clip of, you know, this is called a cylinder head, which you guys are looking at right here, and this is the engine block. Now, where these two can meet, you can sometimes see a greenish color in your engine bay. You'll usually see it around the battery. This is actually a product of electrolysis. It's electricity flowing through these components, and it causes corrosion. Now, this is in some cases it's okay, but there's some cases, I know in the video here he's going to mention that it is normal, but you know, if you have it actually running down and you're seeing that it's like dripping off of components, that could be an active coolant leak, and that's something that needs to be addressed. But if it's just like this, where it's just you see a little bit of crud and it's not really running anywhere, it's not that big of a deal. It's very common. Again, this is a process that happens when the electricity is flowing through these components, because again, your alternator is going to be the component that's powering the car, and that power has to make its way back to the battery, and it does so through all the metal components in the car, that be the engine block, the body, the wiring. It flows through every single part of the car on its way back to that battery.
On some vehicles, you're going to see some green crusting, either around some of the hoses or around where the head gasket meets the block and also the head. This is absolutely normal. If you are concerned, make sure you're performing the correct test for the vehicle, which may include pressure testing the system. Whether it's a leak or just suspicious seepage, you need to investigate and diagnose the leak fully.
And again, it was just a small little clip just in order to be able to show you guys what it is that I'm talking about when I'm talking about a leakage versus seepage, because seepage is very, very common. It's something that you're going to see on a lot of cars, regardless of the make and model. I can get into detail as to which cars you guys should run away from. I mean, primarily speaking, me personally, it may be some of you guys' favorite cars, but I don't mess with German European vehicles. We're talking Volkswagens, BMWs, Mercedes-Benz. And the main reason you want to run away from those cars is because usually when they're over 100,000 miles, you have thousands upon thousands of dollars in components that you need to replace. And if you don't do it right, it will just snowball and get out of control, where you can purchase a car that's $12,000-$15,000, but it has components on it that are ranging from $2,000 to $3,000 for some of these things. And you know, when your repair bill is $8,000-$9,000 on a car that you just bought, you're gonna ask yourself, why didn't I just buy a new car instead of dealing with this? And it's a lot of times it kind of bites people in the butt, because they're after that show factor. They're looking for, you know, a car that's going to be make other people envious of them. But really, honestly, when you're looking at a used car, you should be looking for reliability. And that's just generally speaking what this video is for, is to make sure that you guys are able to buy a car that is going to be reliable. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about here is going to be the multimeter. Now, the reason you want to use this is because this is going to be able to tell you, again, the state of the battery, which nowadays batteries are ranging from $200 to $400, depending on where you go, where you get it from. Whether you go to Walmart or AutoZone, you can get a car battery from anywhere, and they're pretty much going to be hundreds of dollars for you to replace them. And the alternator, which is another $400 to almost $600 in some cases, depending on the actual amperage output of the alternator. Now, you see you have a red and a black lead here. You put the black one on the negative terminal of your battery, and you put the red one on the positive terminal of your battery. And what that's going to tell you is the voltage that is in that battery. When your car is off, when the car is not running, you should have at least 12.2 volts. If it's anywhere below 12 volts, that battery is on its way out, and it probably needs to be replaced. Again, the reason you want to test this is because this is something you're going to be talking to the person selling you the car, be like, hey, this battery is measuring 11.2 volts. They're going to say, oh, well, it's been sitting there. Well, you know, that's something that you need to consider when you're negotiating the price of that car, is that if you buy the car, you may within a few weeks have to put another battery in it. And when your car payment's $600, $700, $800, do you really have an extra $300 to $400 to spend on a battery? These are things you need to ask yourself. Now, once the car is running, if you turn the car on and the engine is running, and you connect these leads to the same battery, what you should see when the car is running, you should see 13.8 to 14 2.1 volts. And that's going to be the voltage you're seeing here on this meter. Okay. Now, depending on the meter that you have, you're going to have, let's see if I can get this to focus here for you guys. You have this symbol right here, which is DC. You see the V with the straight line and the dotted line across it? That is measuring DC current. Okay. And on the other side, you have this little V with a wavy line. That is measuring AC current. In your house, you use AC current. But in a car, you're going to be using DC current. And you want to make sure when you're using your tool, you're in the range of about 20. Oh, see if I can get this to focus here for you guys. See how the display is showing all zeros? You want to be in the range of 20 volts. And what that's going to do is that's going to tell you anything ranging around 20 volts is going to give you a reading. Now, when the car is running, the voltage that you're seeing at the battery, that is going to be the voltage being output by the alternator. At that point, again, once the car is running, if you see anything lower than 13, we can even go as low as 13.4 in some cases, because they're going to be varied based on speed of the engine, and some cars idle really low. If you see anything below 13 volts, chances are that alternator is on its way out, and it's not going to be charging the battery as efficiently. And if you're in a situation in the summer when you have the air conditioning on, you're listening to the radio, and you know the fans are running for the engine, and everything is all being drained on this system, you're going to have an alternator that's going to burn out real fast if it's not putting out the proper voltage. Now, again, these are things that you need to know are okay before you buy a used car. Now, let's just do a quick tally here. Let's say you bought the worst of the worst car, and you bought a car with bad tires, you bought a car with a bad battery, you bought a car with a bad alternator, and you bought a car that has a catalytic converter code. Okay, we're talking close to about $3,000 to $4,000 to replace all those components. Is that something that you're really prepared to spend and you're really ready to shell out, when the fact of the matter is you're looking at a used car and you're budgeting and trying to make a decision that's going to be able to last for a while? The reason you want to know these things is because it is all part of the negotiations. When you are talking, even if you're talking to a dealership or you're talking to somebody privately selling the car, they may tell you to kick rocks. We're not doing that. We're not changing anything. It's fine. The price is what it is. Okay. That is when you walk away. You are not forced and you are not obligated to buy anybody else's problem to then make it your own. You want to buy something that is reliable. And generally speaking, like I said, you're going to have all these different things you need to look at on a car, but primarily you want to make sure you don't have any check engine lights. You want to make sure you don't have any airbag lights. You want to make sure you don't have an SRS light on. And you start from where the rubber hits the road. You start at the tires, okay? And what you want to do is, again, look at the tires. Look at the shock absorbers and look underneath the car where the engine and the differential and the transmissions. You're going to be using the flashlight to look for any leaks. If a car has good tires, and if a car has no leaks, and if a car has no lights, then you can start to say, okay, well, maybe this might be a car that's worth my time. Again, I'm disregarding paint. I'm disregarding interiors here, because that's going to be subjective. What may be okay for one person may be a deal breaker for somebody else. And I can sit here for hours and talk to you guys about this, but I just wanted to give you, generally speaking, an idea of what it is you can do to inspect any car. And if you don't have a mechanic, I really suggest you find a friend that knows a little bit about mechanics and send them this video. Have them look at it, and they may understand what it is I'm telling them to look at, and it may be a little bit less daunting on you. But if you don't, again, a small $200 investment in the tools that I showed you here today. Again, the tread depth gauge. You're going to have a multimeter. You're going to have a OBD2 scanner and a headlamp. All those things together are going to cost you less than $200. In some cases, you could probably spend less than $100. But again, the scanner that you buy is going to be primarily limited to the amount that you've paid for it, because some OBD2 scanners may not be able to check the ABS computer, they may not be able to check the SRS computer. You want to make sure when you're looking at them on Amazon or wherever you're going that it says that it can check those systems, because those are going to be, you know, even more costs that are associated with a used vehicle or even a new vehicle. You know, the big misconception a lot of people make is that they're buying a new vehicle, oh, it's going to have no problems. Well, it could have bad brakes on it, you know, it could have rust on it, it could have been sitting in the same spot for years, because with the prices of some of these vehicles, if you guys haven't checked out my other video on the car market, it's insane. They're selling cars for 80, 90, $100,000, and I don't understand who they're expecting to come along, the average American person, and buy these cars, because you're talking about $1,000, $1,200, $1,400, $2,000 payments for a car. This is not sustainable. But that forces people, normal everyday people, to go into the used car market. And you know, generally speaking, what you're going to get what you pay for, and these dealerships know what they're selling, and they're not required to tell you anything, regardless of if you believe that or not. Once you sign the dotted line and once you turn over your money, it is your problem. You're going to be the one that is going to have to figure out, am I going to be fixing this car, or am I going to be sending it to the scrapyard and back at square one where I'm buying another car? So with that, again, I know I bombarded you guys, and this is already it's going on 40 minutes now, but I'm hoping that I was able to give you a little bit of insight, and I was able to actually prepare you to go out into the market and use those dollars you're getting from taxes, and you might have been saving, you know. And to each his own, what it is you're looking for in a car. I really honestly believe that the paint and the interior and the appearance of the car should come second to the actual functionality of the components of that car. So with that, if you guys have any questions, go ahead and leave them down in the comment section down below. I'll be able to answer whatever it is that you guys ask as best as I can, to be able to help you make a good decision. And if you guys, you know, if you find the video informative and you actually appreciate the content, please consider hitting that subscribe button, that like button, share it around. Send this video to somebody that might need a little bit of insight and guidance on how to inspect a car in this very, very frustrating task that most people, you know, don't look forward to doing. But with that, thank you all. I appreciate your time. And until next time, everybody, please take care and have a good night.